Good morning from London. I love energy and I love travel, and during the past years, I've traveled for real and virtually to see the world's energy supply transition as it plays out in all the major regions and countries of the world, for the seven major energies, nuclear to coal, in power grids, in grid storage, in carbon capture and storage, and in green hydrogen, and in terms of emissions as the bottom line for energy under the Paris Climate Agreement and nationally determined contributions. For today, our travel is to seven countries that are shaping the global energy transition: the United States, Europe, Russia, China, Japan, India, and Qatar. I'm acutely aware that for reasons of time, this excludes Saudi and the UAE in oil, Australia in coal and LNG, and South America in terms of hydro in Brazil, and solar in Chile, but also Canada and Africa. And our journey will not look at oil for transportation, for petrochemicals for reasons of time, and because the charging demand for EVs appears in the world's power systems. And as this is a gas session, I will particularly focus on some of the implications for natural gas. We start our tour in the US, the country with the largest oil production, gas production, and nuclear power production, the highest ability to deploy capital, technology, and expertise to make change, the highest historical CO2 emissions load on the atmosphere. And in the US, we will focus on nuclear, solar, gas and LNG, wind, its power grid, and its emissions. Let's first look at the primary energy consumption, electricity generation by source, and emissions of the United States. And we can see that primary energy demand has been flat over the past 2 decades, that oil and gas dominate primary energy, and the US is the world's largest producer and consumer of oil. We can also see quite clearly that emissions from primary energy is down from 5.7 gigatons to 6 gigatons in a decade, mainly from the coal to gas in power switch. As far as power is concerned, power demand has been flat, but it is now rising at 4%, and gas and nuclear dominate power, with coal rapidly declining and renewables rising. And the emissions from power have declined rapidly in the decade from that coal to gas switch and the rise of renewables. The need for electricity to power data centers is catching both system planners and operators off guard in the United States, and is the most talked about topic in the US electricity sector. And below us we can see the data and AI centers as shown in the yellow bubbles, and see states like California, Virginia, Nevada, and Texas lead by the size of the bubbles in serving and projected to serve the data-hungry and power-consuming heavy demand of cloud computing, of artificial intelligence, and of crypto mining. Each of these centers require hundreds of megawatts for their facilities. Google's energy usage has been growing at a staggering 20% per year, and Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, Equinix, Apple all seek to secure their dedicated needs outside of the utility supply process and target a cleaner set of energy resources. Let's visit a data center in Oregon. Meta, the parent of Facebook, operates data centers in 18 United States states, including Oregon. And here we look down at the data center in Prineville. And Meta is building facilities optimized for AI workloads. But Meta is not alone in Prineville. We can also see Apple right next door. Let's look at the US renewables at wind and solar farms. 1,500 wind farms that have a capacity of 150 gigawatts are led by Texas and Iowa and Oklahoma, as we can see by the concentration of green dots. And on the right-hand side, we see the Alta Wind Center in California, which is the largest in the United States at 1,550 megawatts. Below that, we see the 6,500 solar farms at each of the green dots, total capacity of 280 gigawatts, led by California, Texas, and Florida. And bottom right, we can see multiple solar farms in the southern Mojave Desert in California. California also sets the pace for other states. And whilst we are at renewables, the installed pump storage and battery grid storage in the United States is absolutely negligible compared to the installed 430 gigawatts of intermittent renewable capacity. And also a very insignificant production of green hydrogen takes place on the back of these renewables. The US also does not import any hydrogen. Wind and solar farms and their inherent intermittency reinforce the significant strengthening of the US electric system required to accommodate low load factor renewables. And this visit to the US electricity transmission system highlights the gaps between what is needed and what exists in the graphic from 2020 on the left and 2035 on the right. And that gap is evident in US grid interconnection backlogs jumping to 40% with increased wait times as more renewables were spurred by the Inflation Reduction Act incentives amidst intensified challenges in environmental permitting, with as many as 13,000 permits and public NIMBYism leading to a 15 to 20 year cycle to complete for major transmission. Wind and solar curtailment are rising rapidly due to these transmission and distribution bottlenecks. And as well, US end consumer outages have doubled due to grid overloads, and a meaningful decrease in interconnected queue is very unlikely despite the new administration's stated objective to unleash transmission development and amid grid interconnection costs, which have risen very rapidly. Next, we look at nuclear, and below us we see the US nuclear power plants that provide a total of 95 gigawatts of capacity. The US is the largest producer of nuclear, 93 reactors in 30 states that we see. On average, they're 44 years old, compared to 10 for China and 38 for Europe. They're mainly old pressurized or boiling water reactors. And the failures in 3 Mile Island in 1978 and Japan's Fukushima in 2011 contributed to much public resistance to nuclear growth. Several plants have shut due to economic challenges, largely due to natural gas competition and the emergence of renewables, and additionally, life extension required by license after 40 years is very costly. And as such, there has been a hiatus in building new plants after 3 Mile Island. Another open issue is storage and the disposal of spent fuel, because there is no national repository and reprocessing is not permitted. So today and currently there are no nuclear plants under construction in the US. Many states are promoting new nuclear or doing feasibility studies or siting studies. Let's visit 3 nuclear plants: Berkeley, 3 Mile Island, and the likely site for the TerraPower plant. The Berkeley nuclear power plant in Georgia that we see below us is the most recently completed and expanded nuclear plant in the United States, and now also the largest. The 2 initial units on the left were constructed in the late 1980s, and on the right-hand side, the 2 new Westinghouse AP1000 units began operation in 2023 and 24. And here in Pennsylvania, below us, we see the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, recently renamed the Christopher Crane Clean Energy Center. A partial meltdown at 3 Mile Island reactor number 2 in 1979 raised nuclear safety concerns, and operations at Unit 1 also ceased in 2019 due to financial and regulatory challenges. Now Constellation Energy aims to restart the unit number 1 by 2028 under a 20-year deal with Microsoft, which will power AI data centers with nuclear energy. And here in Kemerow in Wyoming, TerraPower plans to construct their Natrium reactor. Wyoming approved a state construction permit in 2024, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of the United States is reviewing the reactor's licensing until 2026. And TerraPower expects the Natrium reactor to be operational by 2030. And a new partnership also ensures the steady supply of high-assay, low-enrichment fuel for its operations. This will be the first small modular reactor in the USA if it is built. The US produces over 1,000 BCM of gas per year, more than any other country. And the shale revolution, with its horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, has unlocked vast shale resources, transforming the United States to a net exporter. Importantly, it produces dry gas, methane, and wet gas rich in natural gas liquids and ethane, propane, and butane, with the wet gas critical for US petrochemicals. If we look at the key gas basins, the Permian Basin straddles Texas and New Mexico, the Appalachian Basin, the Marcellus and Utica in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia, and the Marcellus Shale is the single largest US gas field, producing over 30 BCF of gas per day. The Haynesville Shale of Louisiana and Texas dominates production, a key dry gas basin so close to the Gulf Coast LNG export terminals that produces 16 BCF of gas per day. And then there's the offshore Gulf of America, which still contributes about 2 BCF a day, and other smaller contributions from the Eagle Ford, the Niobrara and the Bakken, which is mostly associated gas. And behind that, the US gas transmission system is massive, stretching for over 5 million kilometers. It crisscrosses the lower 48 states, delivering natural gas from production areas to storage facilities and ultimate to consumers. Let's pay a visit to the Permian. Below us we see the drill pads of the Permian in Texas and New Mexico, which has propelled the US to be the largest oil producer in the world and self-sufficient in oil. In 2024, the Permian Basin produced about 6 million barrels of oil per day, which is about 45% of the total oil production of the country. And currently there are 35,000 wells in operation, the result of the largest drilling operation anywhere in the world. And that Permian produces large volumes of associated gas, often flared in the early years. As we saw earlier, natural gas is the largest source of power in the US, and below us we see the largest gas-fired power plants. Total installed capacity is 500 gigawatts. And these plants can be ramped up or down quickly to meet fluctuations in electricity demand, making them ideal for balancing the increasing use of renewable energy sources. Let's visit West County in Florida. The West County Power Station contributes significantly to the electricity needs of Florida. It is the largest gas-fired power plant in the United States at 3,750 megawatts. And despite the rise of renewables, natural gas power generation is seeing continued growth. In 2023, 16 natural gas power plants of 8 gigawatts came online. In 2024 and 25, 20 new natural gas-fired power plants are coming online with a total capacity of 8 gigawatts. And all these new gas-fired plants being built are high-efficiency combined cycle. That brings us to LNG, which is the largest form of energy exports from the US. There are 8 plants in operation today, and we can see them on the East Coast. 90% of the cargoes in 2024 went to Europe. There's a further 8 million tons under construction, and 88 million tons have also been approved but yet not under construction. And importantly, on his first day in office, President Trump issued an executive order lifting the moratorium on LNG export approvals that had been instituted under President Biden in 2024. And subsequently, the Department of Energy resumed processing energy export applications. Let's visit 2 of those plants, Sabine Pass and Calcasieu Pass. Below us we see Sabine Pass of Cheniere. It exported the first US LNG cargo back in 2016, and the first project that was constructed today produces 30 million tons from 6 trains. And it has a diverse group of around 12 long-term off-takers, and Sabine Pass LNG has been delivered to more than 20 countries via Panama, across the Atlantic, or via Suez. And we visit next the Calcasieu Pass plant of Venture Global in Louisiana. It has a capacity of 20 million tons per year. And its advanced modular liquefaction technology, employing multiple pre-cooled single-mix refrigerant blocks, was constructed in absolute world-beating record time. And Venture Global now also produces from Plaquemines and expanding both plants. Leaves the US, let's look towards the year 2035. In terms of nuclear, expect large nuclear reactors will be retired and the first SMRs will be under construction. Hydro will see insignificant growth. Solar will see rapid solar growth continuing. The US will be the largest primary energy in terms of gas, and will remain the largest gas producer and LNG exporter. It will remain the largest oil producer, see a growth increasingly constrained in wind, and as far as coal is concerned, coal production and demand slowly declining. The aging grid requires modernization. Interstate transmission bottlenecks is still going to hinder renewables integration. As far as grid storage is concerned, battery projects are scaling fast, but pumped hydro is stagnant. Carbon capture-wise, there's insignificant progress compared to national emissions. And green hydrogen, we will see insignificant production and no imports. As far as the US emissions profile is concerned, that will decline slowly. Next, we move across the Atlantic with American LNG flows to Europe. It is a region with the most ambitious net zero ambitions, a region locked in a standoff with its historically most important energy supplier, Russia, and a region with the most expensive gas, electricity, and petrol in the world. And we will visit European nuclear, solar, gas and LNG, wind, carbon capture, and look at its emissions. But let's start with Europe's primary energy consumption, electricity generation, and emissions. Energy demand has clearly been declining due to deindustrialization. Oil and gas dominate primary energy still to this day. And the emissions from energy is declining fast from deindustrialization, from the coal to gas switch, and the rise in renewables, all in support of climate neutrality by 2045. Turning to power, we can see that power demand is flat, that gas and nuclear and renewables dominate power generation, and that renewables are rising fast. Emissions from the power sector also declined quite dramatically from 1.2 gigatons to 600 megatons in a decade. But more importantly, we alarmingly see that in bottom left, in the year 2000, Europe had 613 gigawatts of power capacity, of which 12 gigawatt was renewables. And today, bottom right, Europe has 1,200 gigawatts of capacity, of which 640 gigawatts is renewables, doubled the installed capacity supply, nearly the same amount of electricity. And this means that Europe is carrying the cost of two electricity systems to reduce greenhouse gas on the one hand, but with a major increase in cost and electricity prices. In power, our tour starts with nuclear, and below us we can see the European nuclear power plants in operation with a capacity of 150 gigawatts. France is the largest and most reliant on nuclear. All the German reactors are now closed. There are 104 operating nuclear reactors in Europe, and their average age is 40 years. And apart from reactors being completed in Slovakia and the UK, there are no other nuclear large or small modular reactors under construction in Europe. Let's visit two nuclear plants, all French European pressurized water design. First, Olkiluoto, and secondly, Hinkley Point. Olkiluoto in Finland has three reactors that we can see below us with a total capacity of 3,380 megawatts, and the much delayed number 3 reactor, Europe's largest, became commercial in 2023, 18 years after the start of construction. And it was Finland's first new nuclear plant in more than 4 decades and Europe's first in 16 years. Hinkley Point C is the first new nuclear power station to be built in the UK in over 20 years, and it will comprise 2 EPR reactors with a capacity of 3,200 megawatts that we can see below us. The cost estimate for these 2 reactors under construction has reached $44 billion in 2023, with first grid connection delayed to 2029. First concrete was already poured in 2017. And it was being built by EDF and China General Nuclear Power Group, but given the political stress between the UK and China, the UK exited China and the UK government has had to step in financially. The role of gas in Europe will also be determined by the expansion of wind and solar power. And below us we see the 7,900 wind farms at each of the green dots, with an installed capacity of 278 gigawatts, 243 onshore and 35 gigawatts offshore. And the red dot, the top, is the Dogger Bank wind farm in the UK, soon the largest offshore wind farm in the world at 3,600 megawatts. And below that we see the 17,000 solar farms with an installed capacity of 300 gigawatts. And on the right hand side, the Witznitz solar farm near Leipzig in eastern Germany on a former lignite open pit mine has a generating capacity of 650 megawatts. The growing grid storage pipeline and the legacy pumped hydro helps to deal with the intermittency from this renewables, but it's by far insufficient for renewable targets. Looking at sources of gas for Europe, with the Nord Stream pipeline destroyed and Russian gas imports via Poland, Romania and Ukraine terminated, Europe has realigned in increasing gas imports from Norway, Algeria and Azerbaijan, and has increased energy imports from the USA and Qatar. Russia LNG is still being imported, but likely to be increasingly sanctioned. Russian gas has been reduced from 50% to near zero, although Russian gas is still understated and underreported and comes in via LNG from Yamal and the Turkstream pipeline. Below us we see the European LNG import terminals that have saved Europe from cold and blackouts in converting from Russian pipeline supply. Of all the imported LNG into Europe, about 60% is imported to the North and Western Europe on the Atlantic side, with 40% into the Mediterranean region. Germany, the Netherlands, Finland, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Italy, and France have all commissioned or expanded LNG import capacity in the past 3 years. Currently, 9 out of 10 LNG cargoes which leave the USA arrive at these terminals in Europe. And increasingly, Qatargas will also feature, given the recent deals signed by Eni, Total Energies, and Shell for deliveries to Europe. Let's visit 2 LNG terminals, the Isle of Grain in the UK and Brunsbüttel in Germany. The Isle of Grain, Europe's largest at 20 million tonnes per year in the Thames estuary, started its life as a peak shaving facility and now supplies 20% of the UK gas demand. And as further evidence of the dramatic realignment achieved by investment in LNG terminals, at the start of the Ukrainian war, Germany had no LNG import terminals. Its gas supply came from Nord Stream and other pipelines, mainly from Russia, also Norway. LNG import terminals today exist in Brunsbüttel, in Wilhelmshaven, in Stade, and in Lubmin. And here we see the new Brunsbüttel LNG terminal with an LNG carrier offloading into an RFSU. For the cold winter months, Germany and the rest of Europe rely very heavily on a network of underground gas storage facilities. And here we see the Security Energy for Europe natural gas storage facility in Reden in northern Germany, using an underground area of around 8 square kilometers. Below us we see the gas-fired power plants in Europe, which are fed by the imported gas and pipeline network with a capacity of 400 gigawatts. And you will see that there are none in France and none in Poland, owing to their respective ongoing use of nuclear and coal. And these gas-fired power plants keep the European power system functioning summer and winter, and with further expansion of 10 gigawatts of combined and open cycle gas generation in construction or commissioning across Germany, Greece, Italy, Ireland, Poland, and the UK. Let's visit one of those at Keadby in the UK. The Keadby 2 gas-fired power plant in England, with a generating capacity of 893 megawatts, has been recently completed, operating as a combined cycle gas turbine power plant, and it is also the most efficient gas-fired power plant in Europe. Both Europe and the UK will have no choice but to build a number of these combined cycle power plants, given the constrained growth in nuclear, hydro and batteries, and the rapid growth in intermittent renewables. For Europe, including Norway, the industrial carbon management strategy calls for 50 million tonnes per year of storage by 2030 and 250 by 2040. And the UK target is a further 20 to 30 million tonnes per year by 2030, and with 191 commercial scale carbon capture and storage projects in development, Europe is seeing a surge in policy, legal and regulatory initiatives at both EU and national levels. And below us we see 45 such projects. Some are carbon capture, some carbon transportation, some storage. Overall, the North Sea is the storage reservoir. The red projects are operational, the white ones are in advanced or early planning. And it is clear that the UK, Denmark and Norway are the leaders. And today Sleipner and Snøhvit and Longship, Northern Lights, sequester about 3 million tonnes per year. Let's visit Northern Lights. Here we see Europe's newest CO2 capture, transportation and storage scheme linking Netherlands and Norway. CO2 is captured at the Yara Sluiskil ammonia and fertilizer plant, and then transported to Norway on the Northern Pioneer on a CO2 carrier. It is offloaded at Øygarden in western Norway and injected offshore Norway. And Northern Lights is the first to deliver cross-border CO2 transport and storage as a service in Europe or in the world. We close our tour with an outlook at Europe for 2035. By then, a few large new reactors will have been retired. The first SMRs is likely to be under construction, but only Hinkley Point as a large nuclear reactor will be online. Insignificant hydro growth will have taken place. Rapid solar growth will continue. As far as gas is concerned, Europe will be the largest importer. Oil imports will decline as mobility electrifies. Offshore wind growth still constrained by economics. Coal declining rapidly, also for steel. And then looking at the power grid, strong cross-border grid connections, expanding interconnectors, but it will face delays in renewable transmission upgrades. Growing storage and legacy pump storage will help, but will be insufficient for renewable targets. Carbon capture will see limited progress compared to national emissions, and insignificant green hydrogen production will take place with some imports. Emissions will continue to decline faster than any other region. From Europe, we move to Russia, the largest energy exporter in the world, the coldest of all the countries we'll be visiting, with a very substantial requirement for heating, and now severely sanctioned by Europe and the United States. And our visit will focus on Russian nuclear, hydro, and gas. Russian energy demand has been rising, and gas and oil and coal dominate primary energy supply. Emissions from primary energy fell from 3 gigatons to 2 gigatons when the Soviet Union collapsed, but has been rising slowly since. Turning to power demand is rising. Gas, nuclear, hydro, and coal dominate. Russia is building no renewables, and it is clear that the emissions from power is still rising. Russia has installed insignificant solar and wind power, and this means that there's no requirement for pump storage, and that the Soviet-era transmission system is not particularly strained by low load factor power generation. Let's first visit Russian nuclear power. Russia today has 36 nuclear reactors at 10 nuclear plants in the west of the country, with a combined capacity of 28 gigawatts. And Rosatom, the state nuclear corporation, aims to build 29 more reactors by 2045. Russia has a complete centralized nuclear industry with full peaceful and military nuclear capability, and is very interested to build out nuclear in other countries. Let's visit the Leningrad power plant. The Leningrad 2 nuclear power plant is located in St. Petersburg. It is the most recently completed plant in Russia, and Rosatom uses modern pressurized water reactors which are considered safe and more efficient than Western designs. And it has 2 power units that we can see below us, each with a capacity of 1,200 megawatts. Russia is the 7th largest producer of hydropower in the world, with 56 gigawatts of capacity at 59 major plants. And below us we see the 3 major rivers, the Yenisei, the Ob, and the Volga, but also the Angara. There are no hydropower plants on the Lena. It's too remote, the area is too unpopulated. The major plants are in the Russian Far East, but Russian hydro is unlikely to expand the untapped potential, so it's too far east, and China has its own hydro program and won't import Russian hydropower. Russia holds the world's largest gas reserves, mainly in West and Eastern Siberia, that we see directly below us. And the Bovanenko field anchors the Yamal Peninsula, cornerstone of the Arctic strategy. The South Tambay field drives Yamal LNG, vital for global exports. The Utrenye field underpins Arctic LNG 2 on the Gden Peninsula. And the Karasavskaya field extends the Yamal production and also pipelines towards European demand. Urengoy used to feed Europe. The Sakhalin offshore fields supply Sakhalin 2 LNG, and the Eastern Siberia's Chadanskoye field powers the Power Siberia pipeline to China. The Urengoy gas field in northwestern Siberia is the world's 2nd largest natural gas field, after South Pars North Dome in Qatar and Iran. And the gas field has over 10 trillion cubic meters of gas, and it is the starting point for Russian pipeline system to Russia and Europe. Natural gas fuels 45% of Russia's electricity generation, making it the single largest source in its power mix. The gas-fired plants account for around 90 gigawatts of Russia's total generating capacity of 250 gigawatts, and most gas plants are clustered near major pipelines and population centers such as Moscow, St. Petersburg, and the Urals. And it ensures both domestic supply and export flexibility for power. Let's visit one of the gas-fired power plants in Surgut. Surgut is a combined cycle power plant located in the Russian city of Surgut, with a capacity of 5,597 megawatts, which makes it the world's biggest gas-fired power station. Also supplies much needed heat to the city during the winter. But this means that Russia can rely on gas flexibility in its power system rather than investing in grid storage. Russia has 4 LNG plants at Sakhalin, at Yamal, at Arctic LNG, but also near St. Petersburg at Potoyeva, which is run by Gazprom. And let's visit 3 of those plants: Sakhalin, Yamal, and Arctic. Below us we see Russia's first LNG plant, which was built by Shell, Mitsui and Mitsubishi, in which Gazprom later acquired a 50% stake, and today it is the subject of difficult sanctions situation. The international JV has been nationalized and the partners have to apply to maintain their interests. Shell has exited. Novatek, an independent Russian LNG player, then took the lead with both Yamal and Arctic LNG, both extremely challenging in terms of cold, dark conditions for construction, the requirement for transshipment of LNG, and the opening of the northeastern sea route to Asia. And both these plants are now embroiled in sanctions stemming from the war in Ukraine. Below us we see the layout of Yamal LNG with its LNG trains, its storage tanks, and an LNG carrier loading. On the Ob River, Arctic LNG 2, with 3 trains and producing a maximum of 19 million tons per year, is owned by Russian, French, Chinese, and Japanese interests. Construction and operations have been beset by both US and EU sanctions, but the first 2 trains are now in operation. Just before we leave Russia, we travel to the Zvezda LNG shipbuilding yard in Bolshoi Kamensk in eastern Russia, where a number of LNG carriers have either been outfitted, completed, or built for Arctic LNG to cut through 2-meter thick ice, a long-term aspiration of Russia. We leave Russia with an outlook to 2035, see new large nuclear reactors built, more small SMRs under construction, and Russia retaining its position as the largest exporter of nuclear power plants. Little growth in hydro, the rivers are too far in the Russian Far East. Insignificant solar installations, the power of Siberia 2 under construction, Novatek constrained, continued oil production and exports as a member of the Big Three with Saudi Arabia under OPEC+, insignificant wind installations, the production, consumption and export of coal declining, that the vast Soviet-era grid will continue to operate but sanctions restricting its modernization, no investment in grid storage, Russia will rely on gas flexibility, no CCS progress compared to its national emissions, and insignificant green hydro production. Its emissions may peak. Next, we travel to China on the Russian southern border. China is the world's largest energy consumer and CO2 emitter, has the most modern energy infrastructure, and has the largest manufacturing capability of solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries. And our visit will focus on Chinese nuclear, hydro, solar, gas and LNG, wind, coal, and emissions. Energy demand in China has been rising very rapidly, and it's quite clear that coal and oil dominate in that supply. Emissions from primary energy is now approaching 16 gigatons, and when we look at power demand, it is also rising rapidly, with coal and hydro dominating, and renewables also rising rapidly. Emissions from power is beginning to level off at about 4 to 5 gigatons per year. There's no better place to start a Chinese energy tour than with coal. China's coal reserves are 4th after the USA, Russia and Australia, but China remains the world's largest coal producer, accounting for more than half of the global production. However, output peaked in 2022 and is expected to decline gradually in the coming years. And China, as we see below us, has the world's largest fleet of coal-fired power plants, and is still continuing to build, but with declining build capacity utilization. It is still, however, adding coal-fired capacity faster than nuclear, as we will see. And on screen, we see the largest coal-fired power plants. Let's visit Tuo Ketuo. Here in Inner Mongolia, Tuo Ketuo is the largest coal-fired power station in the world, with a capacity of 6,720 megawatts. Below us, we can see the 10 units. And this is a significant showcase of Chinese engineering capability in engineering, procurement, and Chinese construction. China has 421 gigawatts of hydro capacity at 502 major plants. And below us we see 4 large Chinese rivers, the Yellow, the Yangtze, the Mekong that flow into Vietnam, and the Yarlung Zangbo in Tibet that flows into India. And we can also see the names of the major hydro plants. Hydro plays a very important role in efforts to reduce the country's reliance on coal. It's also a major driver of development, lifted millions out of poverty, but the dams have flooding, habitat and people displacement impacts. Let's visit 3 major hydro facilities, Three Gorges by Hitan and the new proposed Tibetan plant. Below us we see the Three Gorges Dam and Power Plant on the Yangtze River. It is the world's largest power station at 22,500 megawatts. And as well as producing electricity, the dam is intended to increase the Yangtze's shipping capacity and reduce floods downstream by providing flood storage space. The Bahitan Dam is located on the Yinsha River. It has an installed capacity of 16,000 megawatts, which makes it the second largest power plant in the world. And it is a fantastic feat of civil engineering with many challenges. China is investing very heavily in new hydropower, aim to remain the world's largest hydropower producer. And as such, no country or continent can overtake China in hydropower in the 21st century. Speaking of expansion, in 2024, the Chinese government announced plans to build a major new hydropower plant in Tibet. And below us we can see the Yarlung Zangbo River that flows from west to east through Tibet. And that river has immense hydro potential due to the steep fall of the river over a short distance as it passes through the Himalayas to India. And the dam will have a capacity of 50 to 60 gigawatts, which is twice that of the Three Gorges Dam. And the project is part of China's broader goal for carbon neutrality, but will also stimulate economic growth and job creation in Tibet. However, it has raised much concern about environmental impacts and the displacement of communities, as well as geopolitical tensions with downstream nations due to the alterations in water flow as the Yarlung Zangbo River flows into the Brahmaputra River, which flows to India and Bangladesh. The expansion of Chinese nuclear will also impact gas demand. China currently has 56 operable nuclear reactors with a combined net capacity of 53 gigawatts. And below us we see the Chinese nuclear fleet. The average age is 10 years young, and nuclear generates about 5% of the country's electricity. The country continues to dominate the market for new-built nuclear with 23 reactors under construction. And China has imported reactor technologies from Canada, France, Russia, and the US, and also from a US-Russian consortium of Westinghouse Mitsubishi. China is also actively exploring developing other reactor technologies, including advanced pressure water reactors, high-temperature gas-cooled reactors, and fast breeder reactors. And China is currently marketing the Hualong-1 for export, a largely indigenous reactor design. Let's visit one of those plants, Zhangjiang. The Zhangjiang nuclear power station is located in Guangdong province in the southern part of China. The plant is operated by China General Nuclear Power Group, and below us we can see the 6 pressurized water reactor units with an installed capacity of around 6,000 megawatts. And China builds at scale in this 6-pack configuration to reduce costs. China has 5,413 wind farms with a capacity of 380 gigawatts onshore and some offshore. Goldwind now manufactures 16 megawatt offshore turbines that we can see on the right-hand side, the largest turbines installed in the world. The country also has 12,891 solar farms with a capacity of 800 gigawatts, and all the panels for those are manufactured in China. And on the right-hand side, we see the Gonghe Talatan Solar Farm, which is the largest in China and the world, with a combined capacity of all the units of 9,000 megawatts. The installed pump storage and battery grid storage in China is by far the most significant in the world, but it too is dwarfed by the total installed intermittent renewable capacity. China is rapidly strengthening its national ultra-high voltage AC and DC lines for renewables and electrification to integrate Northwest China's solar and power plants to enable Greater Shanghai's electricity imports to grow and to ensure that the separate southern networks remain stable under all electrical conditions. The Chinese gas transmission network has been carefully set up for domestic gas production and competition between LNG and Central Asian and Russian imports. Demand still grows at 5 to 7% and now exceeds 385 BCM annually. Of that, roughly half of 178 BCM is domestic production from also shale gas. Central Asia supplies a significant 23 BCM. The Russian Power of Siberia 1 delivers 50 BCM, and LNG imports at coastal terminals, diversified from global sources, supplies the rest. Negotiations, as we are all aware, continue with Russia about the Power of Siberia 2. Below us we see the impressive rollout of regas facilities in China, and the scale of the build is of particular impressive interest. 131 megatons of regas capacity is in operation. A further 59 megatons per year is under construction, and plans for up to 250 million tons of import capacity, which could be built within the next 10 years. The fact is that China is a very large gas market. Currently only about 7 to 8% of China's total energy comes from gas, and the government has plans to expand that to 11 to 15% by 2030. The Wenzhou energy receiving terminal in Zhejiang province started operations in 2023. It has an annual capacity of 3 million tons. We can see the storage tanks on the right and the energy carrier offloading on the left, and is all connected to the pipeline network which reaches eastern China and central China. A number of combined cycle gas-fired power plants have been built near energy terminals on the Chinese coast, and they today have a capacity of 100 gigawatts. And that share has doubled since 2016 and now provides 18% of electricity. But there's a policy shift for renewables, and gas is to some degree seen as a transition fuel in the country as far as power generation is concerned. But let's visit one of those, which is Putian. The Putian combined cycle power plant of 1,560 megawatts and its associated energy terminal lies below us, and it's located in Fujian province. So as we leave China, the outlook for 2035 is of new large nuclear reactors being built, small modular reactors being under construction, massive hydro growth with Tibet Hydro under construction, massive growth in solar and panel manufacturing, pipe and LNG imports growing, the Power of Siberia 2 under construction, oil imports declining from EV penetration, massive growth in wind and turbine manufacturing exports, and that coal consumption peaks. As far as its power grid is concerned, the world's largest ultra-high voltage network will still be rapidly expanding to integrate massive renewables. The world's largest battery and pump storage build-out will take place, but still inadequate for renewables. Insignificant progress with carbon capture compared to national emissions, and insignificant hydrogen production. China's emissions may have peaked by then. Next, we journey across the East China Sea and the Sea of Japan to the land of the rising sun, with no hydrocarbon resources, a very highly technical and engineering capability, and a very troubled nuclear program. It is also a country which is committed to other G7 nations to decarbonize by 2050. And we will visit nuclear, solar, gas and energy, wind, coal, green hydrogen, and the country's emissions profile. Japan's energy demand has been declining. Oil and gas dominate, we can see, all imported. And it is also clear that emissions from primary energy is declining very slowly as a result of the country's nuclear troubles. Looking at power demand, we can see that that's declining slowly. Coal, gas dominate. Nuclear is still struggling since 2011. And renewables, mainly solar, is rising slowly. Emissions from the power sector is declining, mainly from the switch from coal to gas. Coal is as important to Japan as gas, and coal has been the backbone of the proud Japanese steel industry for decades. And one of those steel mills is the Kurashiki Mizushima steel mill below us in the Okayama prefecture, owned by JFE Steel Corporation. And we can clearly see the iron ore, coal in storage and steel furnaces, and the mill employs blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace technology to produce 13 million tons of steel per year for automotive and construction industries. In addition to steel, coal also features in coal-fired power generation, which still plays a very important role in Japan. And below us we can see the largest coal-fired power plants with a capacity of 55 gigawatts. Let's visit one of those, Hekinan. The Hekinan power station below us is Japan's largest coal-fired power plant, located in Aichi Prefecture. It has a capacity of 4,100 megawatts, owned by JERA, and we can clearly see the 5 generating units. Importantly, in 2024, JERA trialed 20% ammonia co-firing at Hekinan. Let's next turn to nuclear. Below us we see the nuclear power plants of Japan, which has been an early adopter of nuclear, and the first plant was already built back in 1966. And today the country has 33 operable reactors with a capacity of 32 gigawatts. After the Great Eastern Earthquake in 2011, all Japanese plants were shut down in the subsequent 24 months, and today only 14 are operating. Another 10 are in various stages of regulatory approval for restart. Public resistance also increased after 2011. The government is still promoting significant nuclear share in its power mix and wants carbon neutrality by 2050. And despite significant safety upgrades costing many billions of dollars, local public opposition continues to delay these restarts. However, Japan continues to be an active leader in advanced nuclear tech, developing fast breeder reactors, advanced gas reactors, and also small modular reactors. Let's visit 2 plants, Kashiwazaki Kariwa and Shimane. Below us we see Kashiwazaki Kariwa in Niigata Prefecture on the west coast of Honshu Island, which is the world's largest nuclear plant. The 7 boiling water reactors that we can see produce 8.2 gigawatts of power. It is owned and operated by Tokyo Electric. But after the 2007 earthquake, before Fukushima, it resulted in significant damage to infrastructure. The plant was offline for 21 months, and not all the units came back. Was again shut down after Fukushima. And Tokyo Electric Power is working hard to get public and regulatory approval to restart. Currently, all the units are still offline and does not look if any will be online before 2029. Our second visit is to the Shimane nuclear plant, one of the 2 nuclear plants under construction in Japan. It is owned and operated by Chugoku Electric, and below us we can see Unit 1, which was decommissioned in 2015, Unit 2, which was restarted in 2024, and Unit 3, which still remains under construction since 2005. It has an advanced boiling water reactor. To understand the future of gas in Japan, we need to look at Japanese wind and solar farms. Below us we see the 178 wind farms, capacity of 6 gigawatts with only 188 megawatts offshore, and the Ishikari Bay Newport offshore wind farm in Hokkaido has a capacity of 112 megawatts, and that's the largest operational offshore wind farm in the country. We also see the 9,320 solar farms with a combined capacity of 90 gigawatts, and on the right hand side we see the Nanatsujima Mega Solar in the Kagoshima Prefecture with a capacity of just 70 megawatts. And it has served as an early demonstration of the feasibility of large-scale solar on land reclaimed from the sea. And the installed pump and battery grid storage in Japan today is quite negligible compared to the fairly small installed intermittent renewable capacity. No gas pipelines run to Japan, and so below us we see the 36 energy import terminals around the Japanese coast, so constructed to import energy to Japanese coastal cities rather than transmit gas via a national gas transmission system. Total import capacity is 242 million tons per year, and currently Japan is importing between 60 and 70 million tons per year. At the same time, Japan has imported more LNG than any other country over time. All the LNG terminals are onshore and land-based because of the very harsh mid-ocean conditions. Let's visit one of those terminals, Sodagara. This is the Sodagara LNG terminal near Tokyo, with its 35 storage tanks, mostly in-ground, operated by Tokyo Gas and JERA. and with a capacity of 12 million tonnes per year, currently importing 6 to 8 million tonnes. Imported LNG fuels a number of large combined cycle gas-fired power plants on the Japanese coasts, and Japan's gas-fired power capacity is 76 gigawatts. And below us we see the names of the largest gas-fired power plants. The major operators include Tokyo Electric, Chubu Electric, and Tokyo Gas. Let's visit one of those stations, Futsu. Here in Chiba Prefecture, below us we see the Futsu LNG import terminal and the associated 5,000 megawatt combined cycle power plant near Tokyo. The Futsu plant is the fourth largest gas-fired power station in the world. It completely operates on combined cycle units and is owned by JERA. Japan seeks to lead global hydrogen development, recently collaborating closely with Australia on supply chains. And below us at each of the green dots we see a green hydrogen project in development. Very few as yet are operational. And the Japanese strategy focuses on energy security, on sustainability, on affordability, and safety through various hydrogen technologies. And Japan plans major hydrogen infrastructure, including turbines, vessels, electrolysis, and international supply chains. By 2030, Japan targets 3 million tons of green hydrogen, and by 2050, Japan aims 20 million tons of renewable hydrogen and hydrogen-powered vehicles. Let's visit one green hydrogen plant at Toshiba. Here in the Fukushima Prefecture, below us we see the Fukushima Hydrogen Energy Research Field, a solar-powered green hydrogen plant in Fukushima. It utilizes a 10 megawatt solar array for hydrogen production, and we can quite clearly see the PV solar farm, the electrolyzer, and the hydrogen storage. And it's been jointly developed by Toshiba, Tohoku Electric, Iwatani, and the New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization. We close out our Japan visit with our 2035 outlook. We see new large nuclear reactors built, first small modular reactors under construction by them, insignificant hydro growth, large solar growth, imports of gas and LNG will continue, with gas covering the gap left by nuclear and wind, declining oil imports as EVs penetrate mobility, slow wind growth struggling in deep offshore water, and coal declining slowly also as China takes over from Japan in steelmaking. The fragmented regional grids will continue to constrain renewables. Interconnection will slow that expansion. Grid storage will be high on Japan's agenda, some pump, new pump hydro, but the deployment of batteries limited and far behind the requirements. Insignificant carbon capture and storage progress compared to the national emissions, and insignificant production of green hydrogen. Expect emissions to continue to decline steadily. We now travel south to India, the country with the highest population and the lowest GDP per capita of all the countries we visit, so affordability of energy is a major priority. Country with the largest unemployment, making domestic manufacturing and production a major priority also in energy when it comes to coal and solar panels and wind turbines, and without any oil or gas pipelines running into the country. Our visit will focus on solar, gas and LNG, wind, coal, grid storage, and emissions. Energy demand is rising quite rapidly in India, and in that energy demand, coal and oil dominate as supply. Emissions from primary energy is also rising rapidly as a result of economic growth, population growth, and coal. And then when we get to power, it is clear that power demand is rising rapidly, coal dominating, hydro and nuclear rising slowly, renewables rising quite rapidly. And as far as emissions from power is concerned, that's increasing rapidly, resulting from increasing coal-fired power generation. We start our visit with coal, and below us we see the coal fields and coal import terminals in India, designated by triangles and balloons. And we can see the coal fields, mostly in the eastern and central part of the country, developed to make India the fourth largest coal producer. And as the second largest coal importer, imports are sourced from Indonesia, Australia, and South Africa. And coal remains a critical fuel source in India with ongoing efforts to increase production. Let's visit two places, Mundra Coal Import Terminal on the west coast and the Gewra coal mine. Below us we see the Mundra Coal Import Terminal in Gujarat. It's the world's largest mechanized coal terminal, owned by Adani Ports and in a special economic zone. And as India relies heavily on coal power plants, the Mundra terminal ensures a steady coal supply to that part of the country, contributing significantly to the country's energy security. On the western side of the country, the Gewra mine is an open-cast mine located in Chhattisgarh. It is the largest in India, and below us we can see the many open pits. It's owned by Coal India, produces 40 to 50 million tons per year for power generation in thermal power plants across the country. And as one would expect, the Gewra coal mine has been criticized for its environmental impact, including air and water pollution from coal dust and mine runoff. India has the world's second largest installed capacity for coal-fired power plants, just after China, with a total capacity exceeding 200 gigawatts and growing. And below us we see the major operating coal-fired power plants. Despite a push for renewable energy, India's coal power generation is expected to increase due to rising electricity demand and government support and subsidies for coal mining, which means a majority of coal used in Indian coal power is sourced from domestic coal mines, reducing its reliance on imported coal. Many existing coal plants in India are undergoing upgrades to improve efficiency and to reduce emissions. And a significant portion of those coal power plants are owned and operated by state-run power generation companies. But private sector companies are also increasingly investing in coal-fired power in the country. Let's visit one of the power plants, Vindhyachal. Vindhyachal Super Thermal Power Station is located in Madhya Pradesh. It is one of the coal-fired power stations of the National Thermal Power Corporation. It's the largest power station in India. In fact, it's the 9th largest coal-fired power plant in the world, with an installed capacity of 4,760 megawatts. The coal is locally sourced from the Nigai mines, and the electricity is consumed in Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Chhattisgarh, and other locations. And significantly, a portion of the CO2 is now being captured, a first for India. Let's next travel to see renewables in India, and we can top left see 660 wind farms at each of the green dots, and the largest of which is Mupandal in the south in Tamil Nadu, with a capacity of 1,500 megawatts. There are also 2,759 solar farms in the country, with a total capacity of 106 gigawatts. And in fact, India targets 180 gigawatts by 2030, but this is resulting in several battles between energy and food for space, and also the fact that solar panel is employment challenged. On the bottom right, we see Batla Solar in Rajasthan in the desert, a solar farm of 2,245 megawatts, and the operations are in the harsh Thar desert, requiring robotic cleaning systems, but it is an absolute symbol of India's renewable ambitions. Reflecting on the total installed capacity of sun and wind, the installed pump storage and battery grid storage in India is insignificant compared to the total installed intermittent renewable capacity. India is making slow progress with grid storage, and below us we see India's pump storage and battery storage plants. And the location of the 5 gigawatts of pump storage is shown in blue, and the less than 1 gigawatts of batteries in green. Let's visit one of the battery storage plants, Rajnandgaon, in the east of the country. A growing feature of the Indian electricity storage is to install it with solar, with the associated benefits of increasing the utilization of transmission. And Tata Power Solar Systems has just done that, commissioning India's largest battery electricity storage in the Indian state of Chhattisgarh. And the project includes a 100 megawatt PV plant coupled with a 40 megawatt, 120 megawatt hour utility scale battery energy storage system. And looking forward, in the context of India's electricity system, India will not be able to build enough pump storage to address the massive growth in intermittent renewables. More batteries will be installed for solar. India has no cross-border gas pipelines to import gas, but it has a growing network of natural gas pipelines, mostly run by GAIL. And below us we see the 18,000 kilometers of pipelines playing a crucial part in transporting natural gas from production areas and the LNG import terminals to major consumption centers across the country. The Bombay High Basin and Gujarat hold the majority of India's natural gas reserves on the west of the side of the country, accounting for nearly 70% of total production. And the Indian government has emphasized expanding the pipeline network to improve access to natural gas and reduce dependence on coal, with several major pipeline projects underway aiming to connect new gases to the grid. However, land acquisition, rights of way permissions, and environmental clearances pose challenges to timely completion of these pipeline projects. Below us we see the 7 LNG import terminals in India. There's no shortage of LNG import capacity. 48 million tonnes of capacity is in service, 23 million tonnes under construction, and a further 33 million tonnes are planned. But imports in 2024 was only 26 million tonnes, and yet there is still a drive to build even more capacity when there are known shortages and chronic delays in connecting pipeline capacity. And the challenge for Indian gas companies is that India is a very price-sensitive market, and one where it is difficult to sell downstream on a long-term basis. Let's visit two of the terminals, Dahej and Dhamra. Below us, we see Dahej, the largest receiving terminal on the Indian west coast. Import capacity of 16 million tonnes owned and operated by Petronet. And it continues to expand to support also the Qatari deal with Petronet for 8 million tonnes per year of LNG. And here in Odisha, on the country's east coast, we see the Dhamra LNG receiving terminal, India's newest terminal, joint venture between the Adani Group and Total Energies, can import 5 million tonnes per year. Some industry information say it will be expanded to 18 million tonnes per year. Gas-fired power plants in India have a total capacity of around 25 gigawatts. They're mostly located in coastal areas due to access to LNG import terminals. However, pipeline infrastructure expansion is aiming to broaden that. High natural gas prices compared to coal and limited domestic gas production poses challenges for wider adoption of gas-fired power. India is always seeking bids for more gas-fired power. Let's visit one such power station at Sugen. Located in Gujarat, the Sugen combined cycle power plant has a generation capacity of 1,147 megawatts, primarily running on LNG but can switch to oil as a backup fuel. You can also see the solar park in the background. Looking forward to 2035, we see Indian nuclear expanding with new large reactors being built. The first small nuclear reactors also under construction. Limited hydro growth. Very, very significant solar growth, often with battery storage. Energy imports continue to rise slowly. Oil imports slowly rise despite EV transportation penetrating. Slow wind progress onshore, and coal consumption, imports and production increasing. The power grid will expand rapidly. Renewable integration will be challenged by congestion and balancing capacity. As far as grid storage is concerned, we see pump storage barely progressing, battery deployment slow, and grid unprepared for renewables. Insignificant carbon capture and storage progress compared to national emissions, insignificant green hydrogen production, and as far as India's emissions are concerned, they may peak in this period. We travel to the heart of the Middle East for our last visit for only one reason: Qatari LNG. But before we travel to Ras Laffan city, let's remind ourselves that there are 22 exporting LNG countries and 48 importing countries, with a total of 411 million tonnes of LNG produced and imported in 2024. And on the left-hand side, you see the top 4 producers. They supplied 70% of world supply: the United States, Australia, Qatar, and Russia. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the 4 top importers, or regions accounting for 70% of all consumption: China, Japan, India, and the European Union. The US and Qatar are supplying virtually all importing markets. The US is now the biggest exporter and will stay the biggest. Europe has now overtaken China as the biggest energy importer and is likely to stay the biggest for quite a while. Ras Laffan city is a very impressive place. and the world's largest energy complex. And below us we see the LNG trains of Qatar LNG, of Pearl GTL, the Oryx gas to liquids facility, the gas processing facilities for the Dolphin gas pipeline to the UAE and Oman, and the energy export facilities, the largest such man-made port in the world. And we know that Qatari LNG will expand from an original 77 million tonnes to 126, and then has also announced expanding to 142 million tonnes per year. We take a quick look at the Qatari LNG trains, which have now been similarly branded. And we pay a quick visit to the North Field, which is located offshore the northeast coast of Qatar. This is the world's largest single non-associated natural gas field, and it holds over 900 TCF of recoverable reserves. It's shared with Iran, and below us we can see the gas production platform, the gas processing facilities that support the gas supply to Qatari LNG and the GTL plants. And as we leave Qatar, we look at the Shell Pearl GTL facility, the largest gas to liquids plant in the world, which consumes 1.6 BCF of gas per day. We end our visit by looking at some of the takeaways and implications for global gas in this transition tour. Today we see, as far as security is concerned, that intermittent renewables are growing extremely fast, that battery and pumped storage is way behind, and that gas is providing the power system security. And looking to the period to 2035, an absolutely massive scale-up is required for both batteries and pump storage, and gas will continue to provide power system security. In an environmental context, we currently see that the pressure from 6 gigatons of CO2 from gas consumption may be reduced for a while, but is not going to go away. Air cleanup in India will drive renewables and gas consumption. And looking to the future, gas will increasingly see small modular reactors starting, but neither hydro nor nuclear will achieve the 2- and 3-fold increases required by the International Hydropower Association, the World Nuclear Operators, and the IEA from them. And lastly, a closing comment, because it also needs to be discussed in the trilemma. Europe and Japan today are struggling with high energy prices, and we see that India and Europe will continue to struggle, especially with high energy prices.